A very good evening. This is Avinindra Som and you're listening to the News Roundup on Gold FM.
The top story on Gold FM.
In your top story, the government decided to declare Wednesday of every week a holiday for government sector employees with effect from the 18th of March after taking into consideration the current fuel situation in Sri Lanka. The announcement was made a short while ago by the Commissioner General of Essential Services, Prabhat Chandrakirti. This was his full announcement, which we have left undubbed for maximum clarity.
ඉදිරියේ සෑම සතියේ දිනක බදාදා දින රජයේ නිවාඩු දිනයක් වශයෙන් ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරනවා. ඒක රජයේ කාර්යාලවලට අදාළව තමයි මේ නිවාඩු දිනය ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරන්නේ. ඒ වගේම අපි මෙහිදී තීරණය කරනු ලැබුවා විශේෂයෙන්ම සෞඛ්‍ය, වරාය, ගේම ජලය සහ රේගුව වැනි අත්‍යවශ්‍යම කටයුතු කළ ආයතන සම්බන්ධයෙන් එම නිවාඩු දිනය අදාළ කර නොගන්නටත්, ඒ වගේම පාසල් සහ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලවලටත්, ඒ වගේම අධිකරණ ශාස්ත්‍රයටත් මෙම දිනය නිවාඩු දිනයක් වශයෙන් සැලකීම සඳහා. ඒ වගේම රජයේ සියලුම උත්සව කටයුතු తాවකාලිකව නැවැත්වීමටත් මෙහිදී තීරණය කරනු ලැබුවා. නැවත දැනුම් දෙනතුරු රජය මගින් සංවිධානය කරන ලබන උත්සව නැවත දැනුම් දෙනතුරු නැවැත්වීම සඳහා. ඒ වගේම අපි මේ අවස්ථාවේදී තීරණය කරනු ලැබුවා පෞද්ගලික අංශයෙන් විශේෂයෙන්ම වාණිජ මණ්ඩලයෙන් සහ ලංකා සේවය සම්මේලනයෙන් මෙම තීරණය පෞද්ගලික අංශයටත් අදාළ කර ගැනීමට කටයුතු කිරීම සඳහා. ඒ වගේම දැනට නිකුත් කරලා තිබෙන ඉන්ධන QR කේතය මගින් දැනට නිකුත් කරලා තිබෙන ඉන්ධන ප්‍රමාණයන් පොදුවේ නිකුත් කරලා තිබෙන්නේ සියලුම අංශ සඳහා. ඊට අමතරව විශේෂයෙන්ම සංචාරක කර්මාන්ත, සෞඛ්‍ය, කෘෂිකර්මය, වැලි කර්මාන්ත මේ අනාදී ශේෂ්ත්‍ර සඳහා විශේෂයෙන්ම අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ඉන්ධන ප්‍රමාණයන් කොපමණද යන්න සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගණනය කරලා ඒ ගණනය කරන ලබන ප්‍රමාණය අනුව ඒ ප්‍රවාහන කටයුතු සඳහා විශේෂයෙන්ම අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර ද්‍රව්‍ය බෙදා දීම සඳහා යනාදී වශයෙන් ඒ අමාත්‍යංශ හරහා තීරණය කරලා ඔවුන්ට විශේෂයෙන් ඒ ලැබෙන තීරණ ගනු ලබන ප්‍රමාණයන් අනුව ඉන්ධන නිකුත් කිරීමට තීරණය කරනු ලැබේ.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
As the conflict in the Middle East intensifies, Sri Lanka finds itself at the mercy of global supply chains. Economist Talal Rafi, who spoke to Gold FM, gave an analysis which focuses on the alarming raw numbers.
Fuel is one of the largest imports for us. Around $4.5 billion is projected. I mean, the cost of fuel import alone is going to be $4.5 billion, according to the IMF report last December for this year. But this is before the whole Strait of Hormuz crisis. So right now, with the present prices, it's almost around 50% higher than it was prior to the whole Iran-Middle East war. If this price is sustained throughout the year, for example, it could add another close to $2.5 billion to our current account, which is not sustainable. So even if this continues for another 3 months, this average price at $100, close to around $500 to $600 million hit to the current account. Remember, Cyclone Ditwa, according to the IMF, was caused a hit of $700 million to our current account. So I'm just saying if it's at $100, but if it goes to 150 and above, even few months of it can cost over $1 billion.
Rafi explains that the crisis isn't limited to fuel pumps.
Also, to be noted is that 50% of our power, at least for February, came from renewable energy. But about 20% still comes from oil. So if the prices go up, electricity can also go up prices there. So at the same time, when many countries are also going to switch to coal. So considering that about a quarter or slightly above that of our energy comes from coal prices can also increase. So this can definitely have an impact on the electricity prices in the coming weeks. So that will be another effect. But many other things, for example, gas prices going up. In addition to logistics, it's going to cause food prices to go up. But at the same time, most people don't realize, I've said this before, major fertilizers also come through the Strait of Hormuz. Like, for example, nitrogen fertilizer, urea, methanol. These are all about 1/3 of the global seaborne movement of these fertilizers are through the Strait of Hormuz. So since those are shut, it will definitely, not in the short term, but medium to long term, it can have an effect. Because oil, the prices are not going that high because a major reason is because oil, usually countries have strategic reserves. I mean, Sri Lanka has 1 month. For example, South Korea has around 7 months of storage. But other things like fertilizer are very seasonal and you can't store them for long. These are going to have an impact. So food prices, others can increase in the medium to long term if they especially affect the major food producing seasons.
growing a parallel to India's 1991 bankruptcy. Rafi identifies the current situation as a textbook external shock.
This is a very prime example of an external crisis. Many countries are going to get affected, but in the past also, as I've said, external crises do cause balance of payments crisis. For example, India in 1991 came almost weeks close to declaring bankruptcy was due to Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait. So that the Middle East crisis and oil prices going up brought India almost to close to default in 1991. So this is one sort of a external shock. But other shocks that I always say is Argentina in 2001. Of course, they have structural issues, but the thing that triggered it was because Brazil devalued its currency. Mexico, for example, in the 1980s was because the US increased interest rates. So this is a very prime example. One is, of course, external shocks is oil prices going up. Another external shock can be US interest rates going up. So these are examples. So another factor, of course, we have to keep in mind is that if inflation rises in the US and the US Federal Reserve increases interest rate, that could have a global impact.
In more local news, the government's rollout of the QR-based system for fuel purchases was ill-timed with lack of adequate communication. That's the view of the cybersecurity expert Asila Vaidyalankara on the country's hottest topic. Speaking to us, he also called into question the lack of a pilot project in this endeavour, especially considering the scale of the operation.
In complex system rollouts, it's always best, ideally what we say is either to have a pilot run, so you sort of learn from your mistakes from a smaller population. I think it's fairly naive to think that a system of this scale and magnitude will not have teething issues because it's of a national importance. And of course, this is a system, to be very frank, has by and large worked. And if you recall, when it was initially rolled out, despite having teething issues, once the system stabilized, it went on fairly well until it was powered down by the policymakers at the time. And now you've had it basically dusted off and restarted again. So I think where we are seeing the citizen issues and concerns is primarily because I feel prep time could have been a little more. I felt perhaps the rollout could have been structured a little better. Most of the time, the rollout decision or the system decision to launch is not with the tech guys. It's outside that sphere. And what happens is the technical guys will be told, oh, by the way, we're launching tomorrow. Yes, you can be ready reasonably, but of course, you can't foresee every problem that will come your way. And I think this is part of it that happened. There are very unique situations now. The last time the system was launched, up to now, new vehicles have come in, so there is that. Then vehicle transfers have happened.
He was also of the view that the government could have incorporated some private sector customer handling into their practice in this instance.
Timing could have been managed a little better. Perhaps if you given time for people to register without immediately making sure that they can go out and pump fuel, perhaps that gap would have helped smoothen out some of these system issues. The real connecting tissue here is comms. Had there been people who would translate what the tech guys were saying into a language that was digestible to the general public, I think most of these things would have been smoothed out. Issue handling. Of course, Government Information Center did its best, but within a very short period of time, it sort of reached its capacity. That part, I think, could have been managed a little better, and I think steps are being taken for that, because generally, even for people might want to just ask, because the system was done some time back, people may not even remember. So then if somebody's there to handle those issues, ticket those issues, give people a feedback, listen, we've logged the issue, maybe come back in a couple of hours and say, look, this is what you need to do. I mean, there's enough and more private sector organizations who do that. So I think that sort of customer care or customer handling borrowed from the private sector would have been useful in this situation.
Now in more local news, the National Transport Commission announced a new weekly fuel allowance for passenger buses ranging from 60 to 360 litres following widespread complaints regarding the current QR code system. Chairman of the Commission P. A. Chandrupala confirmed the adjustment today in Colombo as transport, health and tourism sectors report of severe operational difficulties.
Now for some news in brief.
Sri Lankan Airlines has cancelled flights UL 231 and UL 232 between Colombo and Dubai scheduled for March 16th, 17th, 18th, 21st and 24th.
The business news on Gold FM.
The all-share price index of the Colombo Stock Exchange declined 753.29 points to close at 20,939.26 today. The S&P SL 20 index also declined 199.72 points to close at 5,884.93. Total market turnover was 6.6 billion rupees.
International news on Gold FM.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed that the UK is working with international partners to restore freedom of navigation through the vital waterway, but explicitly rules out a NATO-led operation. Speaking from Downing Street, the Prime Minister describes the task as an urgent priority following US-led strikes which weakened the Iranian regime's military capability. Any British military commitment requires a clear legal basis and a thoroughly developed plan, according to the Prime Minister, who labels the deployment of troops as the toughest decision for any leader.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Warner Brothers Discovery secured a historic haul at the Oscars, led by 6 win sweeps of Best Picture winner one battle after another. Paul Thomas Anderson's drama also earned trophies for Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. The studio's dark thriller Sinners followed with 4 awards, including a Best Actor win for Michael B. Jordan, and Jessie Buckley secured Best Actress for her role in Hamnet. The animated feature K-pop Demon Hunters made history with 2 wins, including Best Original Song for Golden.
Sports news on Gold FM.
The Pakistan Cricket Management filed an official complaint against international umpire Kumar Dharmasena following the third one-day international between Pakistan and Bangladesh. Team officials alleged Dharmasena allowed Bangladesh to request a third umpire review despite the permitted time limit expiring. And that's all the news for now. Stay tuned to Gold FM for the latest updates. This is Abhinindra Soma for Gold FM News.
Sit back, relax,